this particular topic was given to me, I thought advertising and design, this is going to be a pretty boring seminar for the audience. I'm so sorry, but that was the first thought that came to my mind. So advertisers are people who work behind the scenes to bring brands to life. Often these are nameless people who have an impact on all of our lives. This impact could be molding our idea of self. It could also be molding our understanding of what is important in today's world. Often they also become symbols of a particular time. For example, 90s kids cannot forget that cringe-worthy but iconic, this is not working. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, so I'll use the loud vocal cords that I have. So all of us remember the cringe-worthy but iconic Guy soap ad that came in the 1990s. Or we also remember the Air Khuda Mere Abdul Salamat Kare. The Generation Z is basically walking at me and saying, what is she talking about? But I'm sure most of us remember all of that. And we also remember Teri Meherbani from U4. So those are some of the amazing ads, some of the amazing ideas that have been brought to us by the advertising industry in Pakistan. So today we're not going to have a theme. We're just going to be talking about, general questions that some of my students as well as some of the audience members have posed to me. And let's keep it like a very informal discussion that we're going to have, okay? So my first question is that there has been a digital evolution throughout the world where back in 2017, especially in the United States, the digital ad spend outstripped the traditional ad spend, and that is something that has continued so far. Where do you think Pakistan stands on that particular spectrum? I'll start with you, Mr. Faraz.
Hello. Hi, guys. Okay, so I'm not from the Gen Z, as you can tell. I'm a digital immigrant. Most of you guys are digital natives. You're hardwired to respond to the sort of the visceral quality of the digital world. But what we've seen in the last 25 years, which is how long I've been working, maybe longer. Okay, really long. So in that amount of time, we've sort of seen this entire migration of individuals who have gone from, sort of cut, pasting, and lettering things by hand to doing what's possible through all kinds of apps today. For the advertiser, and this is kind of tricky, but for the advertiser, what's happened is that they seem to think, by advertiser I mean the client who pays the money, we're the agency. So the advertiser has suddenly figured out that it's really, really cheap to sort of push content through social media and various other digital platforms. As a result of which, instead of putting more money into the quality of production, what sort of ended up happening is that the quality of production is going down because they're saving money there, and they're also saving money in the media spend. Whereas what's happening in the West is, for example, BMW might sort of use the budget allocated for media to making kick-ass, commercials or sort of extended videos, which might be 3 minutes long or 5 minutes long, like almost like short movies, and then they push those through sort of digital pipes. So I think this migration is something that we in Pakistan need to aspire to. I think in bits and pieces, everyone is sort of heading in that direction anyway. I know many of us say we want it viral, and yet when the time comes to make something viral, most people, run the other way because viral means having an appetite for creative risk. And if you don't have an appetite for creative risk, then really you shouldn't even be in the media business, because that's the first, attention is the first call of your profession. And if you're unable to sort of curate that, then it defeats the purpose to a large extent. So yeah, we're moving in this direction. We probably will, but I don't think, I'm a traditionalist, I don't think, and that's a separate debate, but I think that when things are sort of pushed through traditional media, through television, through papers, they have a quality of persuasiveness that digital cannot beat. Digital is the modern day equivalent of junk mail.
But do you think, when we're talking about the Generation Z or the millennials, other than the Generation Z, do you think they're really that attached to, watching? For example, I've not watched television for the past 1 year. So I'm either using OTT platforms, or I'm on YouTube, or those are the places that I am in. And I'm pretty sure most of these students do not watch a lot of television.
Yeah.
So being a traditionalist, do you think that that kind of medium is going to work for a very, very long time in Pakistan?
Not very long. And I also think that the way the media landscape is sort of breaking down, that you're sort of developing independent niches. The understanding is that as traditional media dies off, every single organization, whether you are General Electric, National Geographic, or the company down the road, each one of them is a modern day broadcaster. You have to be a broadcaster. So if you are digital, then that's the shorthand for video. So if you are not broadcast, so for example, you might see this wonderful documentary on the Pakistani snow leopard, all right? And then at the end of it, it would be brought to you by, sort of say, PIA. So you wouldn't say, oh, what a great ad by PIA. You'd say, oh, thank you, PIA, for bringing me this amazing content. So that's sort of the direction that a lot of broadcasters are taking. The trick that creative people have to manage is sort of making sure that the marriage between the brand and the content that they bring is sort of collected. You can't be talking about lollipops and producing chocolate.
Would you like to add something to that, Rahat?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Hello? 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 Yeah, can you hear me? I'm loud enough anyways. So, hey, Assalamu alaikum, guys. Just building on one thing, not in my defense probably, this is my teacher who I learned everything from. So, it kind of puts me in a spot where I'm sitting next to him. It's an honor. But thank you guys for having us. Just building on what Faraz said, the risk that the advertiser, and this risk is at both ends, both at the advertiser's end and at the agency, at the creative end. And that has to be in harmony for us to move on. And answering to the question, because this discussion can become very long because we keep on talking about it, and the relevance of the question that dies out. How are we there yet? Is that kind of, or we're on the way? We are, but unfortunately the progress is very slow.
Okay.
Why it is so slow is what we will discuss in this duration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Mr. Tazeen, Faraz talks about how agencies are finding, there's a problem in terms of how they're going to mesh content and the fact that you have a lot of channels that content can go into. What do you think are some of the challenges that current agencies are facing? Because the bulk of earnings that agencies get have been from media placement. Now with programmatic advertising, now with digital advertising, that's something that's not entirely important. Do you think agencies are facing a crunch, and what can they possibly do in order to make sure that they're still relevant in today's changing industry?
So I'm not from the advertising world. I belong to the academia. What I can say is that we are already seeing a trend in the agencies of developing a section or a side of them which is catering to digital content, right? So you have the digital content side of most of the leading top 10 agencies. So I think they've kind of like given themselves a direction. The wise of them have already created specialized cells which are dealing with this side, obviously employing and looking for a different skill set, which is part of the traditional skill set. So I think abhi agar crunch hai bhi, or if they are facing challenges, I think they're already moving towards where they're trying to establish a separate set. I think what is more important over here is there are two things. So one thing is about, you just spoke about how you are watching YouTube. So there is that digital, there is that rural-urban divide in Pakistan. So I think that's something that we kind of like tend to forget when we talk about the digital, So how quickly are we going to be able to penetrate to the rural is the question. And that's not just going to come from the agency. It has to do with infrastructures, with policies, dissemination power, buying power of the people over there, consumption habits. So while I can talk about Generation Z in the urban environment, can I talk about a Generation Z in the rural I'm not sure. I don't think these things coexist, or maybe they do, but I think there is a little more research and maybe a little more thinking about these things that needs to go into things. The other thing I wanted to talk about was a pickup from Faraz's, where he spoke about, so we are becoming broadcasters. So what I think the agencies need to think about is, so what are the skills that are needed to become a broadcaster? It's not just what we have been teaching and what we have been employing and what we have been trained to do. It's a lot more. So I think that is the challenge. Our agency is being able to find the kind of manpower that they need to become broadcasters. So I think we need to think a little bit about that.
Yes, and Ms. Humaira, because you are the CEO of a digital agency, again, similar question. Do you think that the brands that are coming to you understand the power of digital and the fact that there is a rural and urban divide that Pakistan is going to face for a very, very long time?
We have done 2 brochures this year. 2. We've done 4 annual reports, out of which the ones that were printed in the quantity of 1,000 last year were printed in the quantity of 50 this year. Interesting point, Tazeen. We recently had shot an ad in Thar, and we posted, it's a story about one of our brand's employees and what he's doing in his life and all of that. It's on job creation, and it's a beautiful story about his day. We posted it at 4 p.m. By 4:30, we had 72 shares just from Thar. Wow. So I think there is penetration. I have seen valets looking at YouTube while they're, waiting for somebody to come and collect their ticket. So I think the bigger problem is that we don't have very transparent numbers on those things. But what we're seeing is also, I think what clients love is transparency. They love to save money. They love results. They love it when the cash register rings. And digital is doing all of that for them. For every single dollar that we spend, we have a very transparent report about what it has done that they can access themselves. Unlike the days of Hum TV, you don't even, for example, one of our brand ambassador is Natalie Tomer. These guys will know, the Game of Thrones bad, ugly queen, right? She's not ugly, but she's horrible. She's one of the brand ambassadors for one of our brands. Now, we can target today every single person in the age bracket of X, Y, and Z who is interested in Game of Thrones. What could be more exciting than that? And clients love it because of the results, because they love to save money. I think it's the agencies that have resisted the change because it hits us where it hurts the most. We lose out on the commission. We lose out really, really big. Also, the reconfiguration of the brain and the reconfiguration of the entire sort of organization to move from what we used to call mainstream, I think this is mainstream now, to digital is a little uncomfortable, but I think they're getting it now. What makes me really uncomfortable, though, is when agencies have a digital department. Because a brand cannot have departments. A brand is one unified persona. It cannot have a different face, and that's where we're losing out, and that's where I totally agree with Faraz, that there's a lot of content being generated without going back to the essence of the brand DNA itself. We forget the brand DNA. There's this panic, viral ja raha hai, let's just put it up, we have to build a story around it. The thing that's going viral may or may not be connected to your brand, and you may not be doing it very intelligently. It's better to just hold back and not panic and not pick up on the viral hashtag and stay true to your brand DNA.
Faraz, you had something to say? The traditionalist in you?
The trad-digital in me. The trad-digital. Like, completely agree. I think we have to be careful of the acceleration of stupid. Because there's tons of that, and we need to be sort of careful of how we...
Do you think the stupid works?
Stupid works? So that's the point that I will address. You see, if you guys want to get famous on YouTube, take your clothes off. Correct? Want to be famous on Instagram? Take more clothes off. Okay? So it's not about that. That's just the acceleration of stupid. It's the race to the bottom. And I think more and more people sort of homogenizing themselves into this particular look and feel, this one-dimensional worldview, which is just sort of, it's creating massive amount of destruction where people are unable to sort of bring their individuality, which is what branding is about. Bring your individuality. What sets you apart is what will bring you the sort of value that you are seeking. So that's one thing. Just to add to some of your points, we worked with Mobiling for 15 years, taking them from 300 mobile users to 40 million. And then 3 years ago, we picked up a brand called Zong. And when Zong came to us, they were the fourth contender in a very, very competitive market. They were sort of not chosen by the, a sort of the top tier or the second top tier sort of individuals. The cachet of the 0300 phone number seemed to ring true and better across the line. So even though they had superior technology, their image was right at the bottom. So that just pin that thought. At the same time, we were managing a brand called Khushali Bank, which was about, it's sort of like Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is sort of banking to the poorest of the poor. Where you give a 5,000 rupee loan for somebody to buy a goat, and with that goat, they're able to get you 6,000 rupees. Fantastic bet on women. Women are just better bets. A better return on the loan, and so on and so forth. So over there, people can't read or write. And what we learned in this experience, and the fact that we have sort of a ridiculous amount of mobile penetration in the rural areas of the market, the thing is that when people think that we have to make designs for poor people, they make poor design. They dumb things down. They sort of, so instead of going, I would recommend that instead of going for the lowest common denominator, why don't we go for the deepest common denominator? Go for something that resonates in our collective humanity. I feel like a prophet right now, but I'm going to change my tone. So back to the topic, right? Kill the humanity part. So the bottom line is that, and especially with Khushali Bank, we had to deal with two audiences. The first audience was the poorest of the poor, who cannot read, the illiterate, who hardly had anything to sort of, run their homes. And at the same time, the same brand had to talk to the Asian Development Bank, the blue-blooded donors sitting in New York City. So we couldn't have two different brands, obviously, for two different, completely radical types of people. So we kept a sort of a very Eurocentric, very visual look and feel for Khushali Bank. And over there, we created gorgeous advertising, but in our busties, in the back of yonder, we just sort of created, it was a bird, and we just sort of whitewashed a wall and cropped the bird in an interesting pattern, so people would say, hamare gaon mein khushhali aayi hai. But what we learned as creative people is that those who live on the margins of society do not have marginalized minds. Yeah. And we need to make sure that we don't sort of minimize who they are by virtue of the work that we do. The work that we do must consistently seek to inspire everybody to aspiration.
I agree.
Yeah.
Very nice. So I'm now going to move to a slightly uncomfortable question. So they beat us at cricket, they beat us at filmmaking, and they have been consistently beating us in the kind of ideas they're coming up with in their advertising as well. So why do you think India is supposed to be a similar nation, supposed to be having similar values, has done such extremely wonderful work over the past 10 to 15 years, while in Pakistan we're still stuck with jingles, we're still stuck with celebrity endorsement is in India as well, but yeah, those are the ideas that we're coming up with. Why do you think that we're not as creative, if I may say so, in comparison with our counterparts? Who's going to start and talk about this? Rahat, you've not been, you've been writing notes down. How about you start talking about India and Pakistan? Let's not be apologetic. Let's just, yeah, what do you think?
All came up with this recent one that I saw of these guys was when they were promoting their IPL, and our was just finished, and I think these students would relate to that because they probably saw the same video. To be honest, it comes to the point where I said initially, you're all, no.
We think you're brave. We think you're brave. So we're basically appreciating you at this point in time.
That risk at both ends is what I'm coming back to. आसान लफ्ज़ों में हमने वो gut feeling अभी तक नहीं develop की. आसान लफ्ज़ों में हम बातें बहुत करते हैं.
बहुत बड़ी बात कह गए हम.
हाँ, मैं शर्माता तो बिल्कुल नहीं हूँ, जिसने जो करना है वो कर ले. But at both ends, and हम सारे ये students भी यहाँ से graduate होके all kinds of theories understand करके जितना इस मैविशन को पढ़ाती हैं उतना यार एक तो मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ और ऊपर से देखो तो सही मुझे कहाँ बिठाया हुआ है. अच्छा guys, okay, Assalamu alaikum sir. So yeah, guys, look, I mean, as much of the theory and everything that you guys are going through, and you have brilliant teachers, from this institution to where I've graduated from, we're all here. And if this discussion leads to anything for you guys to learn, I am learning, I'm taking my notes, and I hope you guys are too. We will hopefully be part of the change that is about to come. It will come. This I can assure you of. Because जिस हिसाब से एक तो हमारी आबादी बढ़ रही है और जिस हिसाब से education फैलता जा रहा है, especially in this kind of industry that we are in, it will definitely, we will bring that change. We will, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to be very blunt about this, that why is India or that as a benchmark? Why is this, and I'm sorry, but I disagree with your question, and
Fair enough.
it should be a comparison worldwide. बात ये है कि
Do you want me to compare us with Nike?
Hey, come on, we can compare ourselves with anybody. Let's start comparing us with what we are taught in school and how much do we practice that in the real life.
True.
खुद से comparison पहले करके देखो. See where, how much waters you are in. As a designer, as a photographer, as a creative artist, तुम कितने पानी में हो? ये तो देखो, because मैं भी पढ़ा हूँ, इन्होंने भी मुझे बहुत पढ़ाया है, इन्होंने भी बहुत पढ़ाया है, मेरे सामने बहुत सारे उस्ताद बैठे हैं. How much am I applying that in the real life? और फिर मैं बात करूँ कि हाँ हमारा डिज़ाइन और हमारा प्रोडक्ट, where does it stand? Does it compete my neighboring country, or does it compete the Europe or the Western world out there? Coming back, ये बात again, as I said, panel discussion बहुत मज़ेदार होती है, never ending होती हैं. Coming back to the point, some ads, some products from our end, whether it comes from the agency that we all are inspired from, or whether it comes from a freelancer sitting at his home, we do make that mark. It again is very dependent on how much you and your advertiser is willing to take that risk. It is slow because वही ना, हमारी वेवलेंथ उनकी वेवलेंथ नहीं मिलती. जब मिलती है तो अमेजिंग प्रोडक्ट मिलते हैं, मार्केट में नज़र भी आते हैं, लेकिन जब नहीं मिलती, it's okay, we keep on trying. So that's all I'm going to say. We will hit that mark and probably better than that, and then one day they will be asking this question in their own country. But yeah.
What about you, Tazeen? Do you have an opinion on this? पहले फराज बोलेंगे.
Well said, well said. He's absolutely right. I have issues with the question. The Indian market is huge. If you take all of Pakistan's collective billings, that's like all the advertising money that goes through all the agencies and all the channels, then that is the billing of one medium-sized Indian ad agency. So who are we comparing ourselves with? What that means, what that comparison means, is that you are getting creative talent worth crores, not lakhs, or a few thousand. Do you see the scales that we are speaking about? Creative talent is a very rare commodity. And while this sounds wonderful, I think when you see the amount of bad creative, then you really begin to respect good creative. Because there's a lot of bad creative out there. A lot of people think that just by virtue of pulling some stuff out and being sort of, you know, a novice on Photoshop or a novice in writing or a novice in anything, they can sort of do professional quality work. That delusion first has to be conquered within ourselves. But it won't be conquered until we have more competition. So there's an inverse relationship between creativity and money. If you've got a lot of money, right, say you've got ₹1 billion, then you can come up with a really stupid line, like Lipton, simply the best. Okay? That's a stupid line, right? But if you've got a lot of money, you can make sure that you flash that line so all of us get to know that line. But when you don't have a lot of money, which is where competition comes in, which is where the startup culture comes in, right? Which is where you guys come in, right? When you don't have a lot of money, you're a startup, you want to create something through your own solopreneurship, right? Then what you want to do is to do radical creative. And radical creative doesn't mean that you take your clothes off on YouTube, right? Radical creative means taking an insight and bringing it alive in such a compelling manner that all of us look back and say, yeah, that's exactly how it should always have been. That is the sort of resonance that we are after from young minds and young people. If you're unable to create that, if you're unable to partner and develop that, then it is your fault. But an excuse for mediocrity shouldn't be the reason why the Pakistani industry is seen as not getting its job together, right? There are so many factors that come through. Lack of exposure, certainly, client appetite for risk. But clearly when you do see good work, then we know, for example, if we have to, for example, sell an identity, you can buy a $5 logo from the net. You could steal one for less. But then when you have an agency that can actually charge people a lot of money for doing the same thing they can download for $5, what are we doing that's so different? Then obviously it means we're taking them through some kind of a process. And that process is what is critical. If you guys sort of jump over all the obstacles that are thrown your way, then in many ways you're cheating the system. You're cheating yourself and not seeing how well you could make money and how a journey through a particular process can help you build your business properly.
Adding to that, do you guys think that one of the hurdles that you're talking about could be our culture or the appetite for, you know, I'll give you an example. The Kareem advertisement that just came out. People have a different opinion on, you know, whether it was supposed to be humorous, whether it was a satirical opinion on, you know, forced marriages. So this bride is running away from her wedding, and, you know, it created a furor on social media. And a lot of people called out the brand, called out the fact that the common word, "Be hai, ai hai, hamari traditions nahi hai." Do you think maybe to a certain extent in Pakistani society, we are constrained by the fact that, you know, there are a lot of our sensibilities are hurt easily as a society, or you think that's not an issue? All of you. Do you think our sensibilities are easily hurt? We're not very humorous. We don't have.
Well, I mean, they're hurt until they're not. Exactly. You see, because I think this whole Pakistani thing, I mean, it's just really getting up my, okay, right? Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, you see, human nature, which is who we target, right? Human nature hasn't changed for the last 10 million years, and it's not changing for the next 10 million. And I don't care what passport you're holding, you know? So I think it's a quality of your message. It must be human-driven. It must be driven by deep emotion. And when you've got that right, the world will turn and say, okay, we salute you. And it doesn't mean where you're coming from. I think we have to be a little careful about that. This whole Pakistani badge, which means we're sort of this repressed, backward, sort of congested group of people that just can't see the light of day, I think it's just absolute hogwash. It should be eradicated from our public discourse.
I think, but there is merit to that, where you spoke about creating a resonance in the wider. So you can only create that resonance if you are investing that much effort in connecting. If you haven't looked deep enough, if you haven't connected deeply enough, if you haven't expanded beyond your comfort level, which is your university, your friends, your circle, you're not going to be able to connect with them, right? So in order for you, for instance, when you spoke about the Khushhali Bank, what you did for them in the rural areas, that insight only came to you because you were working. How many of our students actually work on such projects? How many of the thesis projects that we do these days are actually placed in that socio-cultural context? We will pick up the brand or the product or a campaign which is very easy for us. So the SECA, SECB is always going to be the target audience. The city is always going to be where we are going to be looking at. The Generation Z is for who we are going to create that. Or the millennial, unke liye hum campaign banayenge. तो आपने कितनी effort की to getting to know other people, to getting to know how they think. You can only create that magic empathy, and your advertising can only connect with the people if you know them, if you make that effort to getting to know them, right? So I think that's something that you guys really need to think about. And I think that's where the Indian advertising is different from us. It's not just about the creative pool, but it's also about them knowing themselves and being in touch with that, not putting that into a cupboard and saying this is not us. You see, so that empathy needs to be there in order to come up with something which resonates. You see, I think that's also part of it.
Humaira, would you like to add something?
Well, she said it all. I was going to say the same thing, that I think it's basically the context should not be Australia or India or the US. We emulate, we imitate things that are outside of us, but there's a lot of sort of beauty within, which we need to sort of tap into. And I was just going to make a point on the insights, and I remember this Nando's campaign. Nando's has done a great, whenever we have embraced who we are and done a little bit of work on psychographics, done a little bit, kept our eyes and our hearts and our minds open to what's happening around us, and not India and not the US, we've done a great job. I mean, just Coke Studio, all it did was it just took off the veneer from this entire talent pool that has always been there. What Indus Blues is doing right now, all they've done is, the music is already there, they've just shown up. Sometimes I guess it's as simple as just show up with your heart, mind, and soul. That's it.
Can I just add one more point?
Yeah, sure.
So all of this is true, and also I think for this generation and for every other generation coming up, just by virtue of you having your mobile phone means that you are perhaps more connected, and that you have more in common with your age group sitting in Iceland than you do with your own blood-related grandparents. So while there might be this sort of desecration of tradition and all your sort of deeply held beliefs, there is a sort of a harmony. There's a global culture surfacing, and we're all borrowing. I mean, culture isn't dead. It's hugely dynamic and interactive. So we borrow, we get inspired, they do the same. So I think it's one nice mix of things that is taking place.
Thank you. My next question is primarily about the field of advertising and women in advertising. A lot of people that I talked to basically talked about how the difficult hours, or the fact that, if you go out of the workforce and if you dream of coming back into advertising, it's extremely difficult. And, a lot of women who've worked in advertising before do not find it easy to re-enter the workforce because there's somebody new or there's somebody younger than them, who understands, the new tools. So is there some way that we can make advertising a more welcoming field for women? I know for a fact that a lot of women do opt for it as a career, but a lot of them feel that at some point in time they have to leave it, primarily because of the kind of demands that the career puts on you. So what do you think? Do you think there's anything that's being done to make it more conducive for women?
Okay, so for me, I feel advertising agencies should have men, women, children, everybody that we sell to. That should be part of our workforce. About the hours, I have always maintained that we don't need to work late nights. It's a matter of discipline. It's a matter of being organized. It's a matter of, you know, acting like lawyers and doctors and not butlers, and saying no. I mean, I recently called this doctor for an appointment. He said April 5th ko milegi. I was like, I'm either going to get well by then or I'm going to pass away. So, you know, what's your deal? You're a doctor. If a doctor can say no to an appointment, why can't we say, it cannot happen. It takes 5 hours to do it, and I'm going to take my 5 hours to do it. It's going to take 2 weeks. You cannot do a logo in 2 days. You cannot do the work that is required to create a brand identity in 2 weeks. It takes time. It takes a lot of in-depth thinking. It takes research. Also, I think that why should we be understaffed? If we are working late nights, it means there's either something wrong with the way we're disciplining ourselves or our clients, or there's something wrong with our workforce. If our people are not going home and experiencing life, they're not spending time with their kids, they're not going on vacation, they're not visiting the rural areas of Pakistan, they're not interacting with other humans other than a computer screen, they cannot create beautiful advertising. It's just not possible. So I don't believe in this, you know, work hard, drain yourself out, burn out at 35 culture. And I think it's changing. Everybody at my workplace goes home at 6. And if they don't, then there's something wrong, and we address it. The thing about coming back to advertising after a break is, it's, I think, a very practical issue, and it's the same for men and women. It's hard because things change really, really fast. It's a very, very dynamic field. It's a very competitive field. But you can catch up very fast because it's fun. And especially these days, there are like all these resources out there. I just recently did an online course from Wharton, you know. So, and they're not expensive. So you can catch up pretty fast. I think it's really just a question of making that decision and bridging that gap. I know men who have left the field and have not been able to come back for the same reason. It is difficult to catch up. But if you make that effort, I think you're able to do that. I have never, ever felt uncomfortable or, you know, ever felt conscious of my gender. And one is like, I wish, you know, there was more of like a female essence coming in, and they, you know, people acknowledge me as a female. I'd like that. You know, it's like my friend says, "Kabhi to chhed liya karo."
Would you like to say something for us?
So, guilty as charged. So when we were a younger agency, we would pump blood, and that would keep us awake all night. Now we're a much larger agency. We pump ink. That keeps us up at night because, you know, you got to pay for 150 people, otherwise you're dead. So, you know, and we're not a public listed organization. Very few companies are in Pakistan, right? Short of banks and multinationals, right? So, you know, we're true to the context and time that we're in. And like anywhere else, we're doing the best that we can within our environment. Communication traditionally is seen as a sort of female-dominated industry, except for in Pakistan, which is way too many men, way too many men. Do women apply? Certainly. Are the hours hard? Excruciatingly hard. Are you expected to stay overnight? Sometimes if there's a terrible deadline, but don't forget there are times when you will also saunter in at 1 p.m. and leave by 4 p.m. And let's not forget those days as well when there isn't a campaign deadline. So I mean, it all sort of balances itself out. I personally think that the default state of the universe is balance. So you can't really push things in any extremity. It won't last. You know, so I think everything is fine, everything's good. And yes, more women should enter the field. If they apply, they will. So I think it's good. It's not as bad as you're making it sound.
I do think that there is something. I'm not sure, but I was recently part of a jury, and in a group of, I don't know, like 20 people, I think we were maybe 5 or 6 women, the rest were men, and the was part of, where I was judging. So it is? Okay. So I think I was the only female. Yeah. So maybe there is some kind of a gender thing, I'm not so sure. But having said that, I do want to say, echo what you said, that women, if you kind of like embrace the fact that you might need to take breaks and that when you will rejoin, it will take some time. It's the same for men. If a man decides to maybe take off 4 years to pursue a degree or try a new business or something, and then you want to come back into an industry, irrespective of which one it is, you will always face that trouble, right? So it's a gap. So I think you need to embrace that and kind of like move ahead. Yeah. I'm part of education. I work weekends. I work late nights. Yes, I sometimes wander off at 3 like I did today. I walk in at 10 when I have a parent-teacher conference, So there are perks to being women. You get a lot. And there are places which are good if you want to balance your time between family. So those are choices that you make. So I think we need to be a little more you take your own. Where do you want to be? How much do you want to push? Exactly.
I mean, I feel men should be. I feel it's the other way around. I feel that men don't get the flexibility that women do sometimes. I announced a 20-day paternity leave at my workplace, and the boy was like, "Are you serious?" And I said, "First child, second child, third child, absolutely not." Because I'm just gonna keep going. So, I think men and women both need to experience it. And I hate that lady versus like lady doctor.
Thank you so much. I think we're kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to open the floor for the audience. Do you guys have any questions that you'd like them to answer? Yes, there's somebody right there. Can somebody take a mic to her, please? Or should I? She's right here. Can you please tell us your name and stand up and ask the question, please?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jemana Hansrod. I'm a media student, 4th semester. So you guys talked about how, in the media industry now, as a newbie or someone who's been working, we need to open up more. We need to talk about things that are present in our society but are not talked about. But then there's this fear of experimenting, of taking the risks and introducing new things to our masses which I would have to kind of disagree with you, because there are certain masses who are not open to everything. Yes, their sensibilities are hurt even by the slightest. So there's this fear in the clients as well as the people who produce these media content. So my question is, how do we deal with it? Where does the problem start from, and how do we kind of, because there's this huge gap, right? If we kind of compare ourselves to other people around the world or other agencies. So how do we overcome that gap and this fear?
Thank you for your question. So most of what you've said is exactly what I've been fighting for the last, almost 30 years of my career, that these sort of deeply ingrained fears and prejudices that societies seem to have. When we speak about, international advertising, 90% of most things are crap. 10% might see the light of day, and the 0.02% is exceptional, which the world talks about and the stuff goes viral. And we seem to take that 0.02% of advertising from developed economies and markets where there is such a strong retail culture and compare our sort of fledgling growth against those, just sort of those high-end advertising. So, yes, there are issues. Yes, there are places that people don't want to tread on. There are fears. But communication is exactly what is used. It's a tool that must be used to fight those fears. And we have something called cause marketing And cause marketing doesn't just have to be about the environment and the amount of plastic in the city. Cause marketing could be anything that you feel strongly about. You know, from domestic abuse to, men and women rights and whatever else is happening in the world. I mean, there is anything that you want to run away with, you've got communication on your side to help you achieve your goals. The other thing is that fear thing that you keep talking about, I think most of us are shock-proof. Is there anything that you haven't done or seen, but primarily seen, through the media that is available to you? You've seen absolutely everything. So there's very little shock value left in the world. But what truly shocks is originality and the manner in which you say something convincingly. Because that's rare.
I agree. Okay. So I do agree that there's a little less shock factor because now we've seen everything. But again, like even the slightest thing that I talked about, on social media, it kind of blows up. Like regardless of whether people have seen it or not, there is still this, negativity around it.
Around what? Negativity around?
Around the originality and things that are considered taboo, but that needs to be talked about, regardless if it's advertising or any other field of media. But again, so this fear is still there, even though they've seen everything, they've heard everything. And I think that's what kind of affects our clients.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I don't think that's sort of a cultural thing. I think every time, anytime you step out of the status quo, anytime you step out of your comfort zone, you will feel fear. Every time we stepped onto this stage, we all felt fear. It's only natural. But then once you open your mouth, it's all very normal. And it works exactly the same with any piece of communication. In fact, daring communication it's exactly that. Whatever you're saying is what I want to get my hands dirty on. It's exactly what you're saying.
For everyone.
For everyone. Yeah, not just advertising.
A piece of work is not, or whatever you're trying to say and communicate, it's not meant to please everyone. You have like a certain island of who you're targeting and who your audience is, who you're trying to convince, and you can't try and convert everyone. So if you're okay with dealing with the negativity that comes with that, be fearless and do it and say it.
And there's no such thing as bad publicity, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Ask Kim Kardashian. I think
it means it's working.
There can be two ways of looking at it, right? So in terms of, you were talking about taboos. So the fact that you are talking about things, and remember, any kind of change takes time. So the change or the fact that you can actually put out stuff on there, discuss taboo stuff, you can't do that with the PTV or the national carriers, or because the FEMRA ruling is related to some, and then certain mediums are not so much. Abhi unki usme nahi aaye. So the fact that you can actually say it, it's going to take time. But I think there is a change. The fact that people are actually putting stuff out there and then having a debate about it, but it takes time. So there's that one thing about the culture changing and it takes time to change things. The other thing is related to, and I think we need to think about that as communication and advertising students, is how creatively you communicate your message, keeping the sensibilities and that fear factor there. That is your test of a creative. And we've got examples of that. We've seen that with, I'm not so sure about advertising, maybe you would be able to shed light, TV plays. In the 80s, you have talked about the most taboo kind of stuff. There have been entire serials on those. In a time when you were being ruled by the martial law and everything was like you couldn't talk about anything. So the creativity that those people exhibited in crafting their message, getting that across. So you see, everything, like we said, the shock value is not everything. You can say the same thing in a very, very creative way, but for that you need to hone your talents. It's really good.
Thank you. Guys, I know there are a lot of questions, but we're running out of time, and the organizers are basically telling me to get off the stage. So, thank you so much, all of you.
Please answer this question, please.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see. Yeah, that's fine.
there seem to be certain favorite themes or topics or motifs or tropes or whatever. Usually a shadi or a wedding or something. Usually exotic ethnicity. Almost like a sort of, you know, orientalistic kind of fantasy that urbanites need to see. You know, the man with the pagri and, you know, what is it? Can't we break out of that and have, you know, sort of working women or students or, you know, it's not reflect, and it's actually what it's doing is kind of endorsing what people already know and feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think we have to break out of that. I mean, you people.
I'd like to share a story.
Can I take
Yeah, you take it.
We need advertisers like you to invest.
Well, I'm too old, I'm afraid.
Very loud to every male member here that the day you start accepting that you could be replaced by a woman, fine.
You don't have to accept it. Has it not already started to Do you want to say anything?
I was just going to share a story. So recently we placed an ad in one of these, on the Instagram pages of one of these publications. Super glamorous and all of that. And we had the same kind of messaging being conveyed by this girl in Multan, a blogger. We paid her half the fee that we paid to this media, and our numbers here were way higher than what we spent on media, because with social media, that's what's happening, that authenticity is getting a platform. People are able to speak their minds. This girl connected with our consumer way better than this, you know, the glam dolls were doing. So it was just like very, very uplifting. And
Well,
really
Swinery, for example, Shazia's daughter.
Yeah, Shazia's daughter is awesome. And I wish somebody would brand Shazia's daughter. You know,
I think we should.
I wish she became brave enough to do that.
Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I know you guys are very busy individuals. Guys, a huge round of applause for the panelists. So there are giveaways and shields.
Thank you so. Is it not working?
Hello.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lodhi and the panelists for this interesting and elucidative seminar. We would now like to invite Ms. Mehwish-Zara Zaidi to present you with a token of appreciation.
Mr. Faraz Maqsood Hamidi. Mr. Rahat Rafiq. Ms. Tazeen Hussain. Ms. Humaira Saleem.